So we move on to agenda item 5, which is the Draft Housing Assistance and Disabled Adaptations Policy 2014 to 16 for consultation. Could you introduce that?
Thank you, Chair. In 2002, the regulatory reform order for housing assistance was introduced, requiring councils to introduce or adopt a policy on how they were going to deliver discretionary funding in their areas. That policy had to be in place by 2003. Thanet District Council did publish a document in 2003 which allowed us the flexibility to administer loans and grants should we have available funding. In 2009, the policy was reviewed again because we were fortunate in getting extra grant money through the Regional Housing Board, and that allowed us to provide discretionary grants which we haven't been able to do for some time. As a result of those grants that were issued between 2009 and 11, money has been paid back to the council, resulting in a pot of around 131,000. This is a relatively small pot of money, and although the current policy is still fit for purpose, the new policy needs to be more targeted to deal with residents most in need and to take account of the smaller pot that is available. This policy proposes schemes for the use of this funding, and these are the main focus of the consultation. These are the Emergency Assistance Repayable Grant and the Energy Efficiency Top-Up Grant and Loans. The empty property loans have already been agreed through Cabinet in a decision in September 2013, but they are included within the policy because it forms part of the discretionary funding. The Disabled Facilities Grant Programme is mandatory, and although included within this policy, we have to provide them, it is not discretionary. So there is no discretion around whether or not we provide them as part of this consultation. As a result, we're asking members of Overview and Scrutiny for feedback on the suitability of the proposed discretionary grants and for suggestions or alternatives if you think that what's being proposed is not adequate for local need. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I have 3 requests to speak from members of the public. Is Mr. Crompton here? Mr. Crompton, would you like to come forward to a microphone? Can I ask you, I think you said 3 minutes is the standard time for speaking, and if I can ask you to keep your comments general, not to any specific case, because that wouldn't be appropriate. Thank you.
My name's Crompton. I'm a consultant for a company called Accessible Homes for All. We help people who need disabled adaptations to their home obtain money from local authorities like this one. There's a great deal of myth about disabled facilities grants. As Thanet just mentioned, it is a mandatory grant. She didn't mention that by law, if you make a valid application, you have to process it within 6 months. And in 1998, case law established that lack of resources is something that you can't take into consideration. And now I've often been asked by leaders of councils, where do we find the money from? When I ask them, what do you do when people don't pay the council tax? Immediately they say, we take them to court, because they have to pay the council tax, because it's a statutory obligation. Well, this council has a statutory obligation to disabled people in the same way. And if we're going to have equality, then people with disabilities have to treat your employees and yourselves on an equal footing. Everyone in here, I would think, if you ask them, would say that they believe in disability equality. They don't want to agree to fund it, no. But the point being is that if a valid application is made, first of all, your procedures are geared to delay the mandatory grant process. First of all, you tell people that when you approach you, it's on your website, been there for years, I've been dealing with this council and advising them to change their ways for at least 6 years, without any threat or anything else. And basically, if someone makes a valid application, you have to process it. As I say, lack of resources doesn't come into it. You tell people in order to begin the DFG process, they have to go to social services and be assessed. That takes time, and it's not a requirement of the statutory legislation. So that delays the process there. At a later stage, if you read this document, it says a year later, when you've finally got them off a waiting list that you're not entitled to have, you then call social services back in again, and get them to review the person's assessment, which costs the public purse a great deal of money. There's a document out at the moment that's produced on behalf of the government at their instigation, which shows if the government awarded enough money to clear the backlog of DFGs at the moment, it would save over 625 million. Now, there's not many people in this room probably know it, but in 2002, I'm sure you'll have a copy of the Housing Stock Condition Report. It showed that after every person paid their contribution towards disabled adaptation, this council still had a liability of 35 million. If you'd like to make inquiries of how much you've spent in the last, well, since 2002 on disabled adaptations, then it comes nowhere near that. And these people have rights, you know, and unfortunately, where you get the money from, you have discretionary grants here. Well, when people don't pay their council tax, you tell them you've got to prioritise your spending and cut your cloth accordingly. I'm telling you the same, basically. Council tenants have been always disadvantaged. They're entitled to apply for a DFG, and when they don't get told, that's maladministration. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Turn the microphone on, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Mrs. Bean. Mrs. Bean, can I say the same to you? You have 3 minutes, and if you could keep it general rather than any specific case, thank you.
Serena Bean, council tenant. In respect of 3.9 of the consultation draft, concerned on behalf of myself and my husband that the proposals are an attempt to deny council tenants of the legal right to make an application for disabled facilities grant, which leaves council tenants with no choice on how adaptations are built or by whom. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there a Mr. Bean here? No. Okay. Thank you. Would you like to respond to that first, and then I'll invite members to ask questions? Thank you.
I'm not going to respond to all of what was just said because it goes into a bit of detail, but certainly on the issue around the occupational therapy process, we have worked hard over the last at least 6 or 7 years to reduce the amount of time that applicants have to wait on the waiting list. It's a cross-Kent agreement that we send people to the OT service first, simply because it allows them to get some equipment into their property quickly, and we felt that that was a better service for them than waiting with no adaptation at all until we were able to process their application. With regards to waiting time, that waiting time has reduced significantly this year. We prioritise cases. We have high priority cases that are being dealt with within 2 months now. But the application process is complicated and can take up to 6 months for an application to come in. So the total time that it's taking from referral through to completion is now down to 40 weeks, which is the best it has ever been in this council. And actually, compared to a lot of the councils in Kent, it is better performing. So we have worked very hard to try and make this as efficient as possible. With regards to council properties, it is true that it is tenure neutral, that anyone across council tenants, housing associations and privately owned and private rented can apply for a grant. In this council, we currently provide adaptations through the housing revenue accounts direct to our council properties. That policy is being reviewed through East Kent Housing. However, there are disadvantages through going through the disabled facility grant process because there is a cap on the available funding at 30,000. So if adaptations to a council property are in excess of 30,000, they would only get 30,000 towards the cost of the works, and they'd have to find the remainder themselves. So the reason we haven't pushed that at the moment is because we're reviewing the process and the way in which adaptations are delivered, because I do appreciate that there is a waiting list to providing council adaptations, which is longer than it is in the private sector. But that needs to be considered and looked at through this other policy.
Thank you. Councillor Driver.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've got quite a lot of comments to make on this document, so I beg your indulgence, and some of them are extremely serious comments about what's happened. The first thing I want to talk about is public consultation on this document, and I want to express my serious concern, first of all, about the very short period of notice that members were given to make comment on this document. I think it was about 11 working days when the document went out last week. That's not good enough on a document that's as complex, as legalistic and technical as this. So that's point number one. But more important than the consultation with elected members is consultation with the public. And I'm not aware, as of today, looking at the web pages about consultation on the council's website, I'm not aware that this consultation has been publicly advertised, as is normally the course with all other consultations. There is nothing on the council's consultation webpage as of 1 o'clock today. I've been in contact with officers for almost a week about this, and nothing's happened. And I'm not aware of any press releases being sent out by the council about this consultation either. I don't believe any have been sent out. So the public are not aware that we're talking about this evening. Now, this isn't some insignificant small issue that can be passed over. There are 15,000 people in Thanet who are in receipt of disability-related benefits. That's 11% of the population of Thanet. It's the highest number and the highest proportion of disabled people in Kent. And many of those people, at some stage in their life, will want to apply for disabled facility grants or other help with domestic adaptations through the discretionary grants in this report. So it's a big issue. I think it's important on something like this that there is a proper consultation with Thanet's disabled people and with the organisations that represent them, the voluntary and charitable organisations in particular. Now, I've been in touch with officers over the past week about this lack of consultation, and I've been told that the reason why there has been no consultation is that there is no statutory requirement to consult. Now, that might be the case, that might be true, but if you go and look on the council's consultation webpage, I'll just give you a taster of some of the consultations that have taken place with the public over the past couple of years. Keeping your area clean, proposal for Minnis Bay, Thanet Vision, you said it, we did it, the place survey. These consultations and many more consultations on that consultation page are not statutorily required. So why, I want to know, is there a difference here with not allowing a consultation that's not statutorily required about disabled people, but when it comes to cleaning up dog shit on our streets, you can have a consultation. This can only mean to me that this council is institutionally prejudiced against disabled people. It's shameful. Now, I'm going to get to some legal points now.
Excuse me, Councillor, please switch on. First of all, I think that you shouldn't use that sort of language about the council. You are a councillor and it's inappropriate. I would like, with your indulgence, to ask for a response from officers to your initial claim that this...
Can I finish? I've got some legal points about consultation I want to make, so it's all tied together. I'm not finished on consultation. I'll stop when I've dealt with consultation and the officers can reply. Can you please let me finish? I've not finished.
Stop when I tell you to stop on this particular point. You have asked whether there was a consultation and why and what the rationale was behind it, I would like officers to give you a response to that.
I've
Then we'll
not-
see where we go from there. Thank you. So, Chief Executive, would you like? Sorry. Chief.
In respect of the consultation, I think it's correct that actually officers did send Councillor Driver an email in respect to this matter, and in that email it is made quite clear that absolutely it's not a statutory requirement to consult on this document. I think what members need to recognise is this is a draft that's come as an initial discussion document to overview and scrutiny. It's perfectly within your given rights as overview and scrutiny to request and make a recommendation to Cabinet, to which this proposal is going on the 11th September, that you would like it to undertake a wider consultation. I think the important point that's also made in the email to Councillor Driver that was sent today is that there is a concern by officers, by issuing a consultation, for people to come comment on something that they can't actually influence in respect of the discretionary element of the grants, and we're not talking major amounts of funding here, and it is going to be variable, was slightly misleading people's expectations about how they could actually influence that. But this is for overview and scrutiny to discuss this evening, and if you decide as a panel that you want a wider consultation than the one that's being suggested, then that's entirely for you to decide this evening.
Thank you. I'd like to open it to other members.
Sorry, I've not finished the point I was making.
I'm
I need
sorry,
to come
I'd
back.
like other members to comment first, Councillor Driver.
Can I
then
come
we'll
back?
to you.
Fine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, obviously Councillor Driver is in flow, if you like, as to his response to this. I have a number of detailed questions about going through the report itself. So perhaps for flow, I'd like Councillor Driver to continue, perhaps, and then after that, he's finished his scrutiny of this document, perhaps then we can move on and take note of that, and then perhaps I could come in with my detailed questions.
Thank you. Councillor Wright, can I just ask, you said that you have a long legal list or whatever.
It's getting
with regard
shorter.
To the consultation. I mean, given that we've been given the opportunity to say that we can, as an overview and scrutiny panel, request that this consultation be conducted, is that sufficient for you to be satisfied, or do you need to...
I need to expand on the point a wee bit more.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The issue is I would expect as a matter of course for officers of this council to conduct consultation without reference to overview and scrutiny or anyone else, especially on an issue as important as Disability Facilities Grant. I take it as a given that professional officers of this council will go ahead and consult, and indeed there is internal guidance for officers of this council about how and when to consult, and I don't expect it needs to be a decision of the scrutiny committee to instruct that consultation takes place. And here we are, and the reason I'm saying that is because there are actually a number of guidance documents internal to the council and also external to the council, which set out good practice on consultation with reference to this or these particular pieces of legislation. First of all, we've got Government Circular 05/2003, which explains the purpose of the Regulatory Reform Order, which governs the discretionary element of these grants. And page 31 of that document says that consultation should be used to evaluate customers' needs and expectations for future services that could be provided under any new policy. So that's the government in a directive to councils saying when you review your policy, it's advisable that you consult. Secondly, the Equalities and Human Rights Commission have published 2 guidance documents on engagement with people with protected characteristics under the 2010 Equalities Act. There's the Engagement and Equalities Guide for Public Authorities, and also there is meeting the equality duty in policy and decision making, both of which say quite clearly that council officers, when reviewing policies which relate to protected groups under the 2010 Act, which includes disabled people, they should, as a matter of course, engage and consult with the people in those protected groups which that policy actually deals with. Third, we've got the Homes Adaptation Consortium. That's a group of 12 national charities who are responsible for working on disabled facilities grants. They published a guidance document just last year, and they recommend that good councils will consult with users of the Disabled Facility Grant Service when reviewing the policy. And last but not least, our own internal documents and policies. Our constitution, the council's constitution, the principles of decision making say quite clearly that consultation must take place along with taking professional advice from officers, especially when it's issues with respect to human rights. That's in our constitution. The corporate plan, which the leader was just talking about, mentions consultation on several occasions. We will actively engage in consultations on matters that will impact on the lives of people in Thanet at the earliest opportunity. We will work with communities to identify their needs and helping them to develop solutions to meet their needs. We will work with disadvantaged groups to better target the services they need. We will help underrepresented groups to enjoy more opportunities to influence, shape and prioritise the services that we provide to them. So our own internal documents lead me to the strong assumption that officers automatically, when reviewing policy, should automatically consult where it's appropriate and proportional. And it is proportional in this case because we're talking about 15,000 people, 11% of the population. I've finished on that. I've got a proposal I want to make, but I've also got some other technical points which I'll take up after I've made my proposal, if that's all right. So I would like to move that the Overview and Scrutiny Panel request Cabinet to organise a well-publicised 12 weeks consultation period on the draft Housing Assistance and Disabled Adaptations Policy, that this consultation is focused on reaching disabled people, their carers and the organisations which represent them. And I think by doing this, we may change the priorities of this council, and instead of dog excrement coming on top and before of the needs of disabled people, we might get some humanity and dignity back into this council instead of what I believe to be institutional discrimination against people with disabilities in Thanet. So I've got something I've moved, and hopefully somebody with some conscience might second that.
Is that seconded?
Yeah, I'll second the proposal, but not the after comment. Yeah, so if the actual proposal is written down and given to the chair to read out, I will second that. But the adjoining comment made afterwards, I will not second or support.
Councillor Driver, can you take up the proposal? And I will read it out. Right, so it's been proposed by Councillor Campbell, proposed by Councillor Driver and seconded by Councillor Campbell that the Overview and Scrutiny Panel requests Cabinet to organise a well-publicised 12 weeks consultation period on the draft Housing Assistance and Disabled Adaptations Policy 2014 to 16. That this consultation is focused on reaching disabled people and their carers and includes all those organisations, presumably plural, organisations? Organisations which represent disabled people.
Thanks.
Right, we can have a debate. Would you like to comment on it, please?
Chair, thank you very much. There are some observations I would like to make, including my objection to the last statement from Councillor Driver, because I think that's totally unacceptable to suggest that there is institutional discrimination within this council in respect to this particular group. The housing regeneration team work extremely hard to support this particular group, and I think you'll have heard this evening the improvements that they've made in provision of that service, including being the best performers within the East Kent area. And forgive me, Tanya, if I've misrepresented that, but I do believe that is what you said. The other things I think you need to think about is that the DFGs is a mandatory grant. There's not going to be a huge amount of flexibility around influencing what happens with that, so I think you need to take that into account. I think what's happened here is we've mixed the housing assistance and the disabled adaptations policy to try and provide a cohesive approach to providing this service, but at the end of the day a small element is flexible, but the mandatory grant is not something that anybody is going to be able to influence hugely, and I think that expectation needs to be managed, and it's only appropriate that we do that when we go out to consultation, because I'm certainly not going to support misleading people into thinking they can change something when they can't. I think the other thing that we need to take into account is, yes, quite rightly, appropriate and proportional. I think that's absolutely right. And a 12-week period is something we would need to consider in respect of the impact that would have on us delivering that service. And I think that needs to be taken into account, because we don't want to be going backwards when we've already made some improvements in our approach to that. Also, we need to consider where the money's coming from to undertake this wide consultation that's being suggested. So I think some thought needs to be given to that from a proportionality point of view. And I would also finally make the point that inequality impact assessments are very important, and that is why we undertake those, in order to ensure that our policies are not indirectly prejudicing any particular group. Thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to make those comments.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes.
Yeah, thank you. Can I ask for clarification on something? Member of the public stated that we had a statutory right to provide money for these grants. I may have got some of this mistaken. I just want to clarify where we are. And yet we're dealing with a pot of 131,000. Can I just ask legally what the status is? Do we have to supply money for grants? So if we get more applications than this 131 covers, do we have to cover it? Do we have to have that money? Or are we talking about a limited amount of money that we're trying to discuss?
Thank you. We get a pot of money from government that we can use towards disabled facility grants. So the mandatory duty is the provision of the grant. A lot of councils in Kent have actually stopped putting their own money into the scheme, into the programme, and are only relying on the government grant to provide those. The amount of money that the council puts into disabled facility grants is not covered in this policy, because it is an agreed amount that goes through the budget setting process. And as I understand, every year we've been putting 300,000 into that pot to support the delivery of disabled facility grants.
Can I just clarify just some of the numbers here? I mean, it says that 3 grants have already been approved this year under the old policy, value of 43,000. We're talking about limiting the grant limit to 5,000, allowing to assist up to 10 residents. Is that saying that in this year we would assist 10 residents before we put more money in, or?
That is only for the discretionary grants, not the disabled facility grants. So the pot of money that we're talking about is 131,000, and that is a limited pot. That's all that we have, unless grants are repaid from old schemes, and that tops up the pot. That's why under the old scheme, the maximum amount of grant available was 20,000 for home repairs and to carry out to improve the hazards in the property. So if people had hazards in their home, we could go and do works to them. And so far this year, under the old policy, we've had 3 people who are living in very poor conditions where their safety was at risk in their home, and we've had to intervene to carry out those works. It's as a result of that that we've looked at these, because we felt that if we were just providing enough money to make the property safe, £5,000 would probably cover it. That under the old policy, we were providing more than just making it safe, we were bringing it up to decent home standard. So this is why we've reduced it to 5,000 as a proposal. That does not affect the disabled facility grant pot. The disabled facilities is separate.
Yeah, I'd just like to reply to a few points that were made by the Acting Chief Executive, if I may. First of all, the suggestion that the delivery of disabled facilities grants and discretionary help would be in any way disrupted by a 12-week consultation period is, to be frank, risible. We have a policy already in place, and how a consultation on a new policy can affect an old policy, an existing policy, and the delivery under that existing policy, I really can't understand. So I think that should be dismissed. On flexibility, of course, the DFG grant is not flexible. It's a fixed amount of money agreed by government, but the administration of that grant and the processes which are used for people to apply for that grant are infinitely flexible, and the council does have discretion to develop systems by which people can apply. And I think that the gentleman from the public who spoke earlier gave an example of that, where this council seems to be pushing people away from using their own occupational therapists to cut waiting time, or from using their own agents instead of the housing agent that we use, Housing Mosaic. So already we're having suggestions in this new policy of channeling people into particular methods to apply, when in actual fact they've got statutory rights to use a variety of methods to apply. I would suggest that the revised plans are actually building a waiting list by design, by channeling people through to services such as KCC Social Services and Housing Mosaic, who are already oversubscribed. So I think let's get that right as well. There is flexibility in the administration of the legal requirement. Secondly as well, the mention of equality. Well, actually, this is all about equality. This is an Act of Parliament that is directed towards people with disabilities who are protected under the 2010 Equality Act. The revision and the consultation on this document cannot in any way impact upon other protected groups. It's specifically designed to look at disabled people. So to suggest for any moment that what this motion is suggesting may actually cause problems for equality is disingenuous, to say the least. So I think let's get real. And my last point I want to make, and then I'll be silent apart from coming back on some technicalities later. It's absolutely fantastic that we've got the waiting list down to 40 weeks. That's brilliant. But still, there's 15 weeks difference with the statutory time limit. It should be done in 25 weeks. So it's good that we're bringing it down, but the fact that it's taken many years to bring it down to 40 weeks actually provides evidence from what I said earlier, that this council is institutionally discriminating against its disabled residents.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, quite a lot of what Councillor Driver said is true, but of course he's got the wrong enemy. It's a pity that these people are not actually protected from this vicious government who are actually cutting the resources to enable this council to provide the services that it so desperately wants to. That's the problem. I mean, if we look at the amount of revenue that's been cut from this council, this government are only too pleased to actually push services down onto this council, but the wherewithal to carry those out and then withdraw, that's a disgrace. However, that's just a statement. I'd like to go through the actual document itself. I've got a number of points. Sorry.
I think because we've got a proposal and which you seconded,
Sorry.
that we should actually vote on this
Okay,
first,
fine.
because we can still go through. Is that right? We can still vote and then go through the document. That seems to me to make sense. So would you like me to read the proposed out again? It's to the debate. Okay.
Probably for Madam Hammond, just a couple of questions very quickly. One, what is the average time of our consultations? Is 12 weeks the average we generally go for? Do we go for longer or less? And two, what do you feel would be the cost of running the proposal that Councillor Driver has put in front of us, this 12-week far-reaching public consultation?
We do certain consultations, we do run for 12 weeks. For example, the local plan, that consultation would be 12 weeks. But it does vary depending on the document that we're consulting on. I would just reiterate that the point I made was that I would want to assess the impact of a 12-week consultation on the delivery of the DFG. I didn't say it was definitely not appropriate to do a 12-week. I just want to assess whether that had any negative impact on our ability to deliver the service. So I just want to clarify that. My personal view is 12 weeks probably isn't necessary. I think probably a shorter consultation would be sufficiently adequate. Probably I would say 6 weeks for a consultation of this sort. However, clearly in respect to the budget, I can't give you a figure on that because we clearly would have to assess internally how we would deliver an extensive consultation of that nature. So I'm not going to try and pluck a figure out of the air without actually being able to go back and assess exactly from those people who undertake consultations within the council for them to give us some idea of actually what that cost would be, but it would be around staff resources being allocated to it, as well as the actual physical cost of sending out a document to such a wide range of the public. But I'm not saying that we shouldn't do a consultation. I just think these are the things that we need to consider as part of taking a proportional approach to that. And we haven't got that information before us this evening in order to understand that proportional approach to undertaking a consultation. And in respect to the DFGs, I just want to come back around the administration. Yes, of course, there's some commentary that can be made around the administration. I personally think our administration is effective, but the issue is around actually, and what I actually said was not wanting to mislead people into thinking they could change things that they can't around the mandatory requirements of a DFG. So I just want to clarify exactly what was said.
Thank you. I've got a couple more people to speak on the proposal. Yes, Councillor Gregory and then Councillor Thanet.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I was going fine with Councillor Driver's proposal until, having listened to what people have put into here, we are now being asked to vote on something that we don't know the budgetary implications of. We don't know whether 12 weeks is the right period or not. And one of the things I have learned on this council in the last 19 years is that if you make a decision without actually knowing the facts, it usually ends up to be the wrong decision. A bit like the Dangerous Dogs Act. It is something that is done as a knee-jerk reaction, and really, if we're going to be asked to make a decision on this now, here, I don't think I can support it because I don't know enough about the budgetary implications and I don't know enough about the need for 12 weeks consultation.
Well, ditto really. In the past we have done consultations on drafts and we have involved organisations. I remember, for example, the equalities policy, when it was renewed, we did consult with organisations on the draft. So the principle of it, I have no problem with that. But listening to what Madeline was explaining, it made me think that, in fact, we might actually do act in a detrimental manner towards this disabled people, in the sense that it might delay the process in which they might be able to apply, through having to wait for the result of a public consultation on the draft, without even considering the financial implications. So I'm not opposed in principle to it, but before I agree, I think that this committee and Cabinet will need to have full facts in terms of the implications of that possible consultation.
Right, I've got Councillor Campbell wants to speak, Councillor Driver as well. May I suggest to try, because I don't want this to drag on all the evening, I can see that there's definitely a will in principle for exploring the option of a consultation. There's a concern about whether we understand the cost implications and the timelines and everything, and we don't have enough information in front of us tonight. What I want to avoid is and Councillor Driver, I'm sure you don't want a vote to fail on a technicality. If the aim of tonight is to try and recommend to Cabinet that they look at setting up a consultation, which I think is what your aim is, words like 12 weeks, we've been far too specific on it, which may be the reason why it will be voted down if we put it in this format. So I would ask you and you as seconder to consider whether a slight rewording might enable us to pass a more general motion tonight, given that actually we don't have the authority to do anything except ask Cabinet to consider this. I would like to see us basically supporting it in principle and then allowing officers to work out all the implications. And I mean, if there's time possibly to come back to us, but if there isn't time, then it's something that will go through to Cabinet. So that's what I would suggest. So Councillor Campbell and then Councillor Dry.
I'll leave Councillor Driver to take on board what your just comments. But however, I think you hit the nail on the head. To my point to Councillor Gregory and Councillor Thanet is that we're not implementing this consultation process tonight. What we're doing is recommending our views to Cabinet. They will then be fully appraised of a greater facts and information, and they can make a judgment on that. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time, I think, that a recommendation from scrutiny has been rejected by our Cabinet of all flavours. Yeah, I mean that seems to me to be a regular occurrence. But however, unfortunately that's been. No, I'm sure not. I'll leave Councillor Driver to consider whether he'd wish to seek to be less specific in his amendment. But I do support this amendment. I do feel that the community actually does need, and we as a council need to actually have information. And if it actually encourages people to come forward with demands for adaptations and assistance and help, we need to scope the size of the actual requirement that this council would need to provide. If only to take this back to central government to actually hit them over the head for extra funding. I mean, that's the reality of this. We can't simply hope. I'm not suggesting this is a determined policy, but I don't think we need to actually minimise the actual requirement on this council by actually not allowing those who could be eligible the knowledge that they could apply for assistance and help. But I'll leave Councillor Driver to consider his original proposal, whether he'd seek to amend it along the terms that you actually suggest, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Driver?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I can feel the power of positive love because Councillor Campbell's actually supporting what I said. It's good feeling, so I'll try to keep that momentum going as far as positive love will cross the party divides. I'll try to push it. But yeah, I mean, I'm as you all know, I'm a pragmatist. But I mean, I'll make one comment and then I'll talk about maybe something a bit more acceptable to Cabinet. Although I do agree with Councillor Campbell, it's for us to recommend and for Cabinet ultimately to decide. But it does seem a bit strange to me that we've got a 12-week consultation on whether or not we have a Margate Town Council and a Westgate Parish Council. There's going to be 2 public meetings. There's been leaflets galore worth thousands of pounds produced. There's been press release after press release sent for which will probably turn out like Ramsgate Town Council, which will be a waste of space talking shop. And thousands of pounds would have been spent. But I've made my point now, and I'll get on to. But yeah, it
was when you were on it.
It was much more lively, much more enjoyable when I was on it. I miss it badly. But the situation is, I do accept points about the length of the consultation, and maybe I might be happy to split the difference and say 6 weeks and see how Cabinet take that. But so I'm happy to change the 12 to the 6 if that makes life easier for members of this panel, and maybe it might make things a little bit easier as well for the Cabinet to accept this. But at the end of the day, the issue won't go away. This consultation and this policy we're talking about is a policy that literally hundreds of disabled people living in Thanet will depend upon. We've got to get it right, and one of the ways of getting it right, and we're going to use that system. So let's not, for a ha'porth of tar, spoil the ship. Let's try to get something through that Cabinet might well accept, and let's try to be united on doing the right thing for disabled people in Thanet.
Thank you. So you're proposing changing 12 to 6, yeah?
Agreed.
That's agreed